Hi there, and thank you for joining me for today's live reading of Make Me Burn by Alicia Street. And this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1. He supposed it was one of those typical June weddings. Logan Bennett hated weddings. He had skipped the ceremony and managed to come up with an excuse for missing the dinner and not showing up until they were well past serving out the cake. But show up he did. He had to. Bo Briggs was both a client and friend, and someone he owed big time for the contacts he'd sent Logan's way during his struggle to rebuild a failing business. Bo's loving pride in his wife, who ran the events at Maxwell Point, meant Logan could not very well refuse her invitation to this circus of a wedding she had planned for a woman who was not only a client, but also a friend. So he had traipsed from the inn at the far end of the Maxwell Point estate along the walkways that meandered through landscaped gardens bursting with early summer blooms to the sprawling white-columned mansion that was now the event center. When Logan stepped into the huge ballroom decorated with flowers and filled with music and people dancing or milling about, he scanned the tables off to one side of the room where Bo said he would be sitting. A hand waved to him from a table right on the edge of the dance floor, and Logan saw Bo and Hadley. "Sorry to be so late," Logan said as he took a seat next to Bo. "Got a phone call and had to do some troubleshooting." "Hey, I'd be surprised if it were any other way," Bo said, his comment referring to Logan's reputation for working nonstop. Of course, the silent smile he added referred to the comment he'd made to him yesterday about someday finding a woman and slowing down enough to have a real life. "Are the newlyweds still here?" Logan tossed out to avoid the possibility of Bo starting in on that subject again. "Yep, there they are." Hadley pointed out a plus-sized African-American woman wearing a lacy, tiered wedding gown. She was dancing in the arms of a blonde, linebacker-sized Hulk. "Lexi owns a bridal and designer dress boutique and has her own line of clothing. Nate, the groom, had been living in Denver but was paired with Lexi as part of his sister's bridal party a couple years ago. After a few months of trying a long-distance relationship, he moved to the North Fork, and the rest is history." Logan just nodded, unable to share in her enthusiasm, but giving it a try. Hadley loved weddings, and she and Bo had only been married less than a year, so they still wore that newlywed sheen that Logan was sure would wear off soon enough. Bo flagged down a server and ordered Logan his usual Glenlivet, 12, then said, "Didn't you tell me you knew this area? That you used to spend summer and holidays here with a friend's family?" "Yeah, a college buddy," Logan said, the pang of regret that surfaced as fresh as if it were yesterday. "He's still on the North Fork?" "I don't know. We lost touch." Yeah, Logan had lost a lot of things when Victor, the guy who'd been his best friend for years, his trusted ally, had turned on him. Logan's trust level for people had not been too high anyway, but after that, it was in the toilet. "So where's Kirk?" he asked. Kirk was one of Logan's top-level employees he had brought along to assist in hashing out the new investment deal he came here to discuss with Bo. "Don't tell me he's out there dancing." "If you call it that." Bo peered sideways at his wife, who was busy talking to a woman at the next table, then lowered his voice. "Kirk is over there trying to score with that gorgeous little firecracker whose dance floor moves are making every man present suffer greatly." Logan followed his gaze and, holy shit, it couldn't be her. But it was. Jinx D'Alessio. When Logan had agreed to visit Bo here in the North Fork, he wondered if he would see any of the people who'd once been so important to him. And there was the one who'd been most important of all, Victor's little sister. By the time she was out of diapers, she'd proven herself to be such a hellion that her siblings started calling her Jinx, and it stuck. And here she was, all grown up and sexy as hell, and flaunting it like there was no tomorrow. Her blue skin-tight dress showed every luscious, agony-inducing curve. Hell, it practically showed the crack in her perfect butt as she waved her hips around, arms to the sky, her mop of thick brown waves flying as she tossed her head. Snug along the line of her small waist, the dress's low-cut top, held up by skinny string-like straps, didn't cover much of her ample breasts that looked like they might fall out completely any second. And the men surrounding her were just waiting for that to happen, moving in close to sway next to her, ogling her, looking like big horny oafs next to the tiny beauty, including the very married Kirk Trench. Logan's fingers squeezed his rock glass till his knuckles turned white, and a low growl formed in his chest as he tried to keep himself from racing over there and yanking those bastards away from her and delivering a lesson that would put them all in the hospital. Jinx D'Alessio had always been a firecracker, a little troublemaker who used to tickle his funny bone. But tonight her siren dance was tickling a different part of his anatomy. She'd obviously had too much to drink. If her big brother, Victor, were around, he would be dragging her out of here and popping any guy who'd gotten too close, which was exactly what Logan was dying to do. The song ended, and the beat that was driving Jinx subsided to a slow dance. One of the four guys who'd been dancing with her reached for her, but she dodged him, saying, "I've got to sit down and have a drink." "What are you having?" the blonde guy asked her. "Another rum and coke, please." "Coming up." And he ran off to the open bar. When Jinx got to her table where her roommate, Anthea, was sitting, the other three men followed. Anthea snatched her wrist and said, "Back in a minute, boys. Ladies' room time. And while we're gone, feel free to go do something and not come back." Laughing, Jinx let her friend pull her out of the ballroom and down the hall. "You know, if you were not so prickly and condescending to them, you might actually have more fun," Jinx said. "No, thank you. None of those guys are my type," Anthea said, pushing open the door of the restroom. "You should have brought along Rex as your guest." "I know, but he and I are not exclusive, so I thought I'd check out what other men are around. And boy, is there one I'm dying for you to get a look at." "How did you know I had to go?" Jinx asked, hurrying into a stall. "I didn't," Anthea said, taking the stall next to her. "I just wanted to tell you something important without those leering linnies hovering." "Oh, they are just having fun. I might even take one home tonight." "Gee, thanks. Your room is clear across to the other side of the house. You won't even know anyone is there." "There's only one kitchen." "Come on, Anthea. You know I never let any guy stay overnight." Both women came out of the stalls and headed for the sinks. Anthea made a tisking sound. "Don't ask me what you see in any of them. Especially you, since you are always talking about your search for a man who can give you that big screen-level passionate love." "I know none of them come anywhere near what I'm looking for. They are only a fun diversion. Believe me, thanks to the many wild goose chases I've been on, pulling myself into seeing something that is just not there, I know how rare it is to find that kind of magic and how few men are capable of it." "Well, I bet Mr. Sexy Eyes is." "Mr. Sexy Eyes?" Jinx asked, confused. "Yes," Anthea let out a small squeal. "He's here. That is what I wanted to tell you." Her eyebrows shot up. "You mean the guy who's been staying at the inn? The one you and all the other waitresses have been drooling over?" Anthea worked on the waitstaff at the inn that was part of the Maxwell Point estate. "Yes," Anthea said with a little hop. "He walked in about 10 minutes ago, and he is sitting at the table with my boss and her husband. I think he's doing some kind of business deal with Bo Briggs. I'm not sure, but aside from being megawatt hot, I know he owns some kind of company and has shitloads of money." "Down, girl." Jinx really liked her new roommate, but she hadn't known her for all that long. Anthea answered an ad Jinx had listed for a roommate 5 months ago, and already they were close. And Jinx needed a friend these days. The person who'd been her bestie since high school, Bailey Abbott, or rather Bailey Hull now, was busy with a husband and a new baby that her life revolved around. So Jinx hardly ever saw Bailey outside of the gift shop the two women still ran together. Jinx also felt guilty for the ironic jealousy that sometimes surfaced unbidden. Ironic because for so many years it had been difficult to dig up a date for Bailey, who was taller than most men and super quiet. Meanwhile, Jinx always had more guys around than she could handle. Yet now Bailey was happily married, and Jinx was still just having fun with a host of mediocre men while she searched for her elusive, larger-than-life true love who would knock her off her feet and show her how exciting love could really be. "When we get back to the ballroom," Anthea said as they walked out of the ladies' room, "if you could hold off your horde of admirers long enough, I will point out Mr. Sexy Eyes to you." "Are you going to introduce yourself?" Jinx asked. Anthea smirked. "Why should I? What would I say? 'Hi, remember me? I'm the girl who served you that mushroom omelet this morning.' That's sure to win him over." "I disagree. He might be looking for some company tonight. Why not try it?" "Jinx, he drives a Ferrari, for God's sake." "Doesn't mean he's a snob." Maybe not, but he is so out of my league, a god among men. I would get one night with him and he'd forget I exist tomorrow. I might rather have one night with a god than years with... I'm not like you, Jinx. What is that supposed to mean? Hand to her hip, Jinx stopped and faced her friend. After an awkward moment, Anthea said, You aren't afraid to go OTT, even if it means you get negative feedback from some people. I'm not comfortable being looked at and talked about or putting myself on the line. I'm okay to just drool from afar. Look, I know what some people say about me, but you know what? This is my life, and I'm going to damn well live it rather than hanging back and watching from the sidelines. Have I had mud on my face? Plenty. But I just pick myself up after a faceplant and start over, regardless of other people's opinions. Jinx, I didn't mean to imply that. I know. Jinx reached out and gave her a hug. I'm sorry for pushing you. We all have to do things our own way, right? You have already helped me get a job and maneuver so many obstacles that I'm grateful to you for. But when it comes to men, considering your track record, I think I'm the one who should be giving the advice. Jinx threw her head back and laughed. I have a feeling I know what that would be. Stop hanging with the kind of guys waiting for me in the ballroom. Anthea nodded. The reason you end up just killing time with twerps like those guys is because you keep looking for someone who's going to make fireworks go off in the sky when he kisses you. A hero of romance novel proportions. You're looking for a man that does not exist. Point taken, Jinx said, but a voice inside reminded her of one man that would fit the bill. Too bad she would never see him again. And even if she did, there could never be anything between them. Jinx hooked her elbow around her girlfriend's and started back. All right, show me, Mr. Sexy Eyes. Let's go drool from afar together at your magnificent, unapproachable god on earth. When they returned to their table, 3 of the men were still there, one with a new rum and coke for Jinx. She thanked him and took it, then turned and stepped toward the dance floor with Anthea. Over there, at that table where Hadley and Beau Briggs are sitting, Anthea discreetly gestured to the table on the other side of the room. He's on the left, she whispered, wearing a dark charcoal suit that looks like it cost a mint. Those dancers are blocking my view, Jinx said. They will move when the song ends. Right now, he's leaning forward with his elbows on his thighs and his head down anyway. Anthea pulled Jinx a little more to the side. We can see better from here. Only trouble is, over here, he can also get a clear view of us staring at him. Don't worry, if he is as good as you say, we aren't the only women looking, and he is probably used to it. Jinx got into place and zeroed in on the guy. Just as she did, it seemed he sensed someone watching him and lifted his head, and her whole world stopped. That face. She knew every chiseled angle of it, and when his sexy brown eyes met hers and darkened slightly with recognition, she could not breathe. Frozen in place, she nearly dropped the drink from her hand. Logan Bennett. Her heart went into warp speed. Mr. Sexy Eyes was not just Anthea's god on earth. He was hers, or he had been at one time. A guy she had worshipped from afar back when she was an innocent teen who fell hopelessly in love with her big brother's best friend. All through high school, she had kept a photo of him and her brother on her bedroom nightstand just so she could gaze at her secret crush every night before falling asleep. She knew what his torso looked like under that suit he wore tonight, had memorized every aspect of his long, lean, muscular body that moved with perfect lion-like grace. 13. Jinx had been 13 years old when Victor first brought his college roommate home with him to spend the holidays with her family. His own family a shambles. Logan had become a regular part of hers, spending holidays and summers year after year, and with each year, the bond between them had only gotten more intense. Each time Logan defended her when Victor treated her like a pain in the butt, or when he tossed her an "I got your back" smile when she got in trouble with her parents. He'd noticed her. He'd seen her in a way no one else in the family had. But while Jinx had spent years fantasizing about him, she doubted Logan had any idea his smiles gave her wet dreams, or that every look from his sexy eyes went straight to her clit and her heart. Her heart that he broke when he left town without so much as a goodbye or "see you around, kid," making her hate him. Isn't he gorgeous? Anthea said, giggling next to her and bringing her back to the present. Jinx nodded, unable to speak. Should she tell her? What would she say? Even if Jinx decided to tell Anthea how well she knew her Mr. Sexy Eyes, she couldn't right now. The words would stick in her dry, tense throat, All she could do was stand there, returning Logan's penetrating glare. Their eyes were still locked, riveted on each other, his dark gaze filled with an arrogant challenge and anger, and the sexy heat of desire, a look she had wished for so many times in the past. Luckily, she was saved by a man's arms coming around her from behind. It was the guy named Kirk. Jinx leaned back against him and then swayed to the music. Anthea rolled her eyes and left as Jinx proceeded to swivel and rock to the slow beat with this tall, dark-haired honey. Yeah, he was good-looking enough to be her escape move from the snare of Logan's eyes that she could still feel on the back of her head, now that she had turned away. Kirk started nuzzling her neck and murmured, "Let's get out of here." Exactly what she needed, some no-strings-attached sex. She went to the table, grabbed her purse, and then headed out of the ballroom with Kirk. Logan was on his feet and racing to the exit without a glance back at Beau, whose "is something wrong?" question would have to go unanswered. He made it to the lobby just in time to see them outside the front entrance, Kirk's hands all over her, igniting Logan's rage. He bolted forward, ready to yank the asshat away from Jinx and pummel him. But then his lightning-fast brain kicked in with a solution that would not end up in a lawsuit, not to mention possibly upending the deal he was working on with Beau. He pulled out his mobile and held it up. "Hey, Kirk," he said, striding to the embracing couple. "An important message came in from your wife. She's been trying to reach you. You better go make a call to your wife right now, man." Logan made a point of emphasizing the word wife, and it had the desired effect. Jinx pulled away quickly from Kirk, giving him a murderous look. "You're married? Get away from me, you lying dirtbag." Meanwhile, Kirk also had a murderous look on his face, but it was aimed at Logan. He strode past him, back toward the building, grumbling as he went by. "Message from Meryl, my ass. You're just pulling a cock block because you want this hot little nugget for yourself." Logan did not bother to defend himself. Didn't need to, since he paid Kirk's salary. All that mattered was that he'd stop Jinx from getting used by a man like him. Yeah, that same old need to protect her was still there in spades. As soon as Kirk left, Logan turned to Jinx, and there it was between them again. The intense heat and simmering passion that had grown with every visit he'd made to her family's home, making each day that much more difficult, but oh, so much sweeter. Of course, he had never touched her, never let her see how much he wanted her. Aside from being jailbait, she was Victor's baby sister, and he had sworn a pact with Victor to beat the shit out of any man who tried to take advantage of her. Like Kirk. But years had gone by, and Logan had changed. He fought his battles in boardrooms and conference tables now, preferring moves like the one he just pulled on Kirk to ensure he got what he wanted. Speaking of something he wanted, Jinx stood there, staring daggers at him, her D-cut breasts jutting out, just begging to be licked. Her Ava Gardner face mixed a sultry heat and fury. Was that an underlying sadness he could detect? Logan stepped closer. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Jinx?" Her nostrils flared. "How dare you come barging into my life out of the blue? I have not seen you in 7 years, and you think you can show up and start playing Big Brother? I don't need you to rescue me." "Apparently you do." He jutted his chin in the direction of Kirk's retreat path. "I haven't forgotten your tendency to get yourself in a jam now and then." "Well, I'm perfectly capable of getting myself out of them these days. Thank you. I'm all grown up now, in case you haven't noticed." "Oh, I've noticed." And time stopped once again, the tense heat between them almost palpable. Jinx tossed her thick mane of dark hair over her shoulder, and that move sent his pulse racing. He had always wanted to dig his fingers into her hair, to pull her in close and devour her mouth. In fact, for years it had been his favorite way to begin his jerking off sessions in the shower, until everything fell apart. "Do you have a ride home?" he asked, reminding himself of the reason he was standing out here, to make sure she got home safely. "None of your business, dude." "You can't drive. You've had too much to drink." "Oh, really? Well, I thought I might just hit this club down in Riverhead." She forced out a high-pitched laugh. "Cut it out," Logan said. "You've never been a good actress. Or a giggler." "Hey, Jinx, I thought you left with..." Hearing a gasp, Logan turned to see the woman who'd been hanging out with Jinx earlier. Her eyes going wide, she gaped at him, then looked from Jinx to Logan and back. "I changed my mind," Jinx said to her friend. She lifted a hand, gesturing to Logan. "Anthea, this is Logan Bennett, an old friend of my big brother's." Logan, this is my friend and roommate, Anthea King. Logan reached out and shook the woman's hand. Seeing how nervous she was and the blush coming to her face, he offered a warm smile and said, Hey, Anthea, I recognize you. Didn't you serve me a mushroom omelet at the inn this morning? Anthea laughed and nodded. Yeah, that was me. I usually do breakfast and lunch, so if you're here tomorrow morning, I'll be there too. Well, I look forward to seeing you. In the meantime, I want to make sure Jinx gets home all right, since she's had a bit too much to drink. Anthea smirked at Jinx. My thoughts exactly, and luckily we came in my car. Then you'll get her home? Absolutely. Jinx pursed her delicious lips, lifted her chin, and strutted off with her friend, without giving him another word or so much as a backward glance, just as he had done to her 7 years ago.